day I get a phone call, and Hal says to me, "Hey, Dad, I have this swelling in my groin. Um, and I went to my doctor, and he said, okay, I'll give you some antibiotics and whatever, and then why don't you make an appointment with a surgeon to biopsy the node?" And so he did that. And unfortunately, like so many interactions with doctors, it was the end of the week, I believe. Steve, correct me if I tell the story a little off. And so he was waiting for Monday or Tuesday to go to the surgeon to get the biopsy. And then sometime, and this is where I don't have the details, but sometime over the weekend, Steve realized he hadn't heard from Hal and wondered where he was. And then I assume he tried to call him and otherwise figure out what happened to Hal. And then it was probably on a Sunday, am I guessing, that he had the smarts to go over to his house. And Hal actually lived on the second floor of the house. And Steve saw a light on the second floor, and he wondered, hey, what's up? He found a ladder. He ran to his house. He got the ladder. He put the ladder up to the second floor. He looks through the window. What Hal's out on the floor, totally unconscious. He'd been there. This is the worst part of it, for at least a day. If anyone knows medicine, his CPK levels were off the charts from muscle. His muscles started to dissolve from, if you have a patient in a bed or, they need to be moved around so that doesn't happen. And that, I didn't know any of that, obviously. So I'm sitting at my office in Chattanooga, and he's in Connecticut, in whatever town it was. And Steve immediately called the cops, 911. They broke into the house. They put him in an ambulance. And I'm sitting at my desk in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I get the call. And I get this young intern in the ER lady, and she says, you Hal's father is just in. We don't think he's going to live through the night. And Lee and I went, what? And then how do I get from Chattanooga to Bridgeport Hospital? And so we did, but we got there. It took forever to get there. And I'm looking out the plane window thinking of Samuel Barber's Adagio and not knowing, is he going to live or die? I mean, so no offense to Kim, but when we got the call from Kim, we were going through the exact same scenario all over again. And as a parent, hopefully you don't have to do what we did twice. So we got up to the hospital. He was still alive. He was in critical condition. They didn't really have a diagnosis for what took place. And I knew enough, of course, to interact with them. I even called one of them. I worked with infectious disease physicians, so I called one of them and asked him what he thought. And he definitely had a encephalitis of some kind, and he was very sick, and they couldn't pin down quite what happened. And so we sat around the hospital waiting for him to regain consciousness. When he did, because he had encephalitis, he was acting very strange, and so we didn't know, are there going to be deficits or what's going on. Fortunately, finally the medical situation clarified, and it turned out he had something called cat scratch disease. It's an organism that's called Bartonella, and it's carried by cats. He had a cat named Chirps, I believe. And so what happened exactly was the cat scratched his foot, and that explained why his lymph node in his groin had blown up, because that leg was infected. And then it became systemic, and then he developed what's called a post-viral encephalitis, which is very dangerous. And fortunately, I mean, Los Strong's, obviously, he survived, and he survived without any deficits. And if Steve hadn't intervened, he would have died at 32. Thank you, Steve. Let's give him applause. So, anyway, I didn't know whether I should tell that story, but I think it's a good parenting child story, actually. And since Steve's here, we've done that. I have just one more, a little bit of, it's a good closing story. What about the last week that Hal was alive before he came to the hospital? I got a call before he left on this business trip. He called me and he said, "Hey, Dad, I've been invited to go with my colleagues. I think we're going to go to Hartford, Connecticut, to the home office, and then we're going to roll down to New York to an AWS. I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, the business guys are here. Was it AWS meeting in Javits Center? Yeah, in the Javits Center in New York. And he was because, we're New Yorkers originally. I grew up in Manhattan. And he said, "Boy, I'm going down, and then I'm going to take 2 days off, Thursday and Friday, like so many business people kind of do. And I'm going to go to the Village and listen to jazz." He really liked listening to jazz. It's the irony of all that. And then he was flying home on Saturday when later that day, I assume the event happened. But the irony of that is I had never really talked to him about jazz. And he somehow really got into that music. When I was 17 and growing up in New York, I started getting interested in jazz as a high school student. And when I turned 18, I started migrating to the Village Vanguard and other jazz clubs, to the degree that I ended up talking with the editor of Downbeat magazine, and he agreed. He said, "Why don't you go out and cover some of those jazz events at the clubs?" And I ended up, as a 18, 19-year-old, writing reviews of jazz performances in New York City. And they were published in Downbeat magazine at the time. I even got a cover story on Jazz magazine, which is long defunct, about a pianist that I got friendly with in Manhattan. And then I also wrote the liner notes for 2 jazz albums on Blue Note Records in 1965. And then when I started getting interested in biology and medicine, I dropped jazz, and I really haven't done much with it. But then the irony of it is, here in the last week of his life, he was essentially repeating what I had done and never talked about, really. I mean, I have the record albums and things, but I don't think we ever talked about jazz. So there's something musical. My younger brother, Wayne, is a master guitarist. He's sitting right there. The blues, put your hand on Wayne. That's Wayne. And my brother, who is a corporate guy, amazing drummer. Professional drummer, really. Thank you. And so there's a musical streak in the family, no doubt. So I guess after this happened to Hal, I thought to myself, how wonderful. What a send-off. It's kind of weird to say that. He felt really comfortable at HFG. He did his jazz thing, repeating what I had done as a kid, really. And then he came back home, and it was like he was so happy about that week, the way it transpired, because it was everything he wanted to do. Everything's good at work. I'm doing and he even said to me, he said, "Well, no one else in the family is really interested in jazz, so this is a great opportunity, to go down to New York." And I said, "Great." I was so pleased. I thought, yeah, you've succeeded in life. You did a job, you raised a family, you did exactly what you wanted to do, and then came back home, and I was waiting for the report. And in fact, this is really weird. The last text message I got was, I think, the day he got back. I said to him, Hal, you did it. You did everything I did when I was 18, only you did it at 54. And then the last thing he sent me was, ha ha. And that was Hal. And so his life came full circle in a way. And I think that was a very, very, very familiar. So I've talked enough. I don't even, how long did I talk? 45 minutes. So let me, I don't know. Do you think you or Phil should talk a little next? Okay, let's do that. And Muntz, do you want to? I think my brother's nickname is Muntz, family name. Yeah, so we'll find you a slot to say a few things. Sure. Okay. Don't trip on anything here.
Yeah, thank you for giving that insight and all.
Yeah.
So I'm Jay Drummond, Kim's older brother. And first and foremost, on behalf of both families, thank you to all of you that have traveled in so far. For those of you live streaming on YouTube, thanks for letting us know the world is watching. Appreciate that as well. Speaking of travel, my last interaction with Hal, I just got back. I was at the time leaving on one of these kind of spontaneous but yet epic travel trips with my oldest son, Adam, who's going to be going to grad school here in a little bit. And he was taking some time off. And on a whim, he's like, hey, Dad, I'm going to Indonesia. Would you care to join? And fortunately, I was able to. And so we were just there. And on our way, Hal was texting me as he was going to New York City because my younger son, Corey, just moved there in January. And he's like, hey, do you think Corey would like going to a jazz show with me? And I said, if he has the time, he's, starting off a new job and all that. I'm like, I'm sure he would. Here's his contact information. And he's like, hey, by the way, he goes, when you going on that trip with Adam? I'm like, I'm literally on the way to the airport right now. And so his last text message to me was, what an epic trip. Have a great time. 48 hours later, and I'm halfway around the world, I get the call from my sister with what just happened. And nothing is more helpless feeling than being literally as far away on this planet as you can be during a situation like that. But what gave me solace was the fact that Hal, had texted me how much, to be on this trip and to share that experience with my son. So anyways, I wanted to kind of give you my, a little bit more color on my view of Hal. Thank you, Dr. Riker, last night when he asked if anybody would like to say some words. I raised my hand. You can imagine being the brother-in-law, right? So that's the lens in which I'm going to paint the picture. So any of you that are brothers out there, right, that have a younger sister or older sister, right? I would argue nobody's probably a bigger judge of your sister's spouse, right, than a brother, right? You want to protect, you want to make sure, she's going to be okay. So I'm like, who's this cat? That you're Hal? I'm like, all right, we're gonna put him through the gauntlet, right? So, yeah. So very first and foremost, how does he treat my little sis? And as Dr. Riker said, amongst all of his family, just a stand-up guy. And obviously everybody here knows him, but he was a terrific person around the family. And you can see what great kids, and he treated my sister terrifically. So he checked that box. That was the most important one right out of the gate. So I'm like, all right, let me get to know him a little bit more. Wonder where this guy went to school. And as you alluded to, happened to go to University of Colorado, where I went to school. And I'm like, all right, what a coincidence, right? So
something to do with Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffaloes, go Buffs. And, we were happened to time overlapped, but we didn't know each other while there. But that was pretty cool. So then through kind of that same thing, as you mentioned, it was rare for two kids from Connecticut to go to school out in the Midwest, especially at that time.
Actually, my brother's family went to the University of Kansas, all, including I got my.
Yeah, you said you went there as well. So, but we both also, I think what drew us out there was our love for the outdoors and the environment and hiking, fishing. And we really enjoyed our time doing that even together whenever we got to get together as families. So up in Connecticut, I had a boat and really enjoyed when Kim and the family were living in Connecticut as well, having, Hal, Jackson out on the boat. We'd go fishing and, it was easy to forget about what was going on in the world out there. It was kind of like a happy place for all of us out there. So, doing activities like that, definitely check some additional boxes, pass those tests too. You see the guitar up here, and you mentioned the music that the Riker family enjoys and is proficient at. I don't have a musical bone in my body. It's not what I do. I can appreciate music, and I did that through Hal. I also love jazz and all. As a matter of fact, I think Hal was one of the first people I know. He was bootlegging digital music, Napster type stuff way back in the day, and he would have like these burned CDs of music, and I think maybe music and that was the best of music and IT maybe back in the day, right? Taking advantage of technology, and that was another area too. I mean, we would constantly talk about technology. Again, not my strongest strength, but I would learn through him about AWS. We talk about crypto and investing and all of that as well. So a lot in common there. Just look at some of my notes as well. So in getting together families, one of the things that I think we both learned it at University of Colorado, and many of you may have picked up on a card game at school. It's called Setback. And that had become one of our family pastimes whenever we get together. As a matter of fact, I was just out here over July 4th, and we would have pretty competitive Setback games. Kim and Hal made, I still think there was some kind of signaling or something going on, because you guys, they were super duo of Setback that used to frustrate the heck out of me. So I'm a little bit competitive. But they had a connection even through cards where they could read each other's mind and play really well. And then the other thing that we had in common, both working for Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Connecticut. I spent my career, majority of it was Stanley Black & Decker out of New Britain, Connecticut. And Hal most recently at the Hartford. I had some colleagues shared back and forth and stuff, but we would just talk about the corporate world and, navigating that and whether it's through career advancement, whether it's navigating, just the office and stuff like that. So we enjoyed our time together doing that as well. And, I had a few more things in here, but I think I've kind of touched upon it. All along the way, how constantly pass the checks. As Dr. Riker said, our family treated him like a son, like a brother. He was great, and we really enjoyed our time together. He will be missed tremendously. And to my sister, I'm still here for you now more than ever, right? So we got it. Yeah. So anyways, with that said, Phil, we'll go through the lens of a best friend and
The latest best friend.
yes.
All right, guys, I've got a big act to follow. Two guys who are like strong public speakers and myself who absolutely hates it. But you corner me and I'll talk all day one-on-one, but you put me in front of 20 people, you might see a little sweat drop here. Anywho, Hal, I just want to start off. I thank everyone, thank the family for allowing me to speak. Hal meant the world to me. And I'm going to tell a little bit different angle, different lens that I saw Hal in, but all still, I think it's all the same kind of, we've saw the same things in him. He loved his family more than anything in this world. Jackson, Lily, I love them too. We lost a super trooper, and Kim as well, and but. So how did I meet Hal? I feel like we got to kind of touch this because like they said, it's been about, I'd say teetering on 5 years or just then. Well, I was blessed to be the guy that helped him buy his dream home. So I was referred by some of his colleagues over at the Hartford. They couldn't make it here, but they did express their, condolences to the family, and they did want to be here. They just had a trip but they a great family as well. The consuls, Dan and Beth Consul, had called me and said, "Hey, Phil, I've got a guy. You got to talk to him. You got to help him. You're the best." So I said, "Okay." So we hadn't met, Hal and I. We talked on the phone a little bit, and maybe Kim a couple times, but mainly I spoke to Hal. And so I'd say the first 3 months, I'm kind of like, Hal's not a Facebook guy. Never was, as long as I know him, and not his thing. Kimmy is Facebooker. Me, I'm a Facebooker, a little avid, we'll say. But there's no way to know what Hal looks like. I just have this personality and voice that I would talk to on the phone for an hour or so. Maybe 2-3 times a week. And we get, long conversations. Kim would be like, will you get off the phone with Phil? Yeah. But, and it's going to, really, Hal came into my life when I needed Hal. And I swear that on anything. I had lost my father, not to, go into the story too much, but I lost my father 4.5 years ago. And it was the hardest thing I've ever endured. At about 40 years old, 41. And I needed a Hal to help me to get over that pain. So without him, so we met at this time, helped him with the house. I'm going to jump around a little bit, but I finally meet Hal, and I'm like, man, Hal, I had this other picture in my mind. I thought you were going to be this stunning guy. And he had the greatest laugh, most beautiful smile. And I almost brought me to tears several times looking at it. He walked into a room and just exuded happiness. I don't think the only time I've known him piss is when he talked about Nancy Pelosi. And that, I don't think I ever knew him to be an angry person. Not an angry bone in his body. He would give anyone the, a chance. He could conversate with just about anyone about anything. Like they mentioned, a common theme here is Hal was a self-taught person. He was the ultimate at teaching them stuff. So, like a good example of that is every year I do a little charity event, and it's for safe passage, and someone else I know, her kid passed, and so I do that, and I sponsor a team. So you pay your money and you bring a team to go play golf. Well, Hal, I'm like, this year, I'm like, Hal, you're coming with me, and he's like, well, Phil, I got to take lessons before. I was like, no, you don't, Hal. You probably can watch a YouTube video, get it, and be Jack Nicholson after 1 week, where I'm going to be out there in the sand somewhere searching for my ball, or in a pond. But Hal just had a knack for everything. And I think, like myself and him really kind of pressing where I was going in the beginning was Hal was there for me at a time that I needed a friend. And I know a lot of people, I've been here 14 years. I've got a good couple of friends, but I needed a best friend. And I think Hal came into my life at a time where I really needed that. We have the same love for jazz music. Absolutely. I played trumpet. Hal played trumpet, coincidentally. He, drummer. I saw the videos his father sent me in this group text. It was great to see him in that context, playing the drums. He had his drum set. He loved art. So we had all those common interests that I think just drew us, he was more than a best friend. He was my brother for the past 4.5 years. And I'm going to be really sad without him for the next 25 years, because we had all these plans. But anywho, he was just one of those people you look up to. And he just, anything he did, it was with a smile on his face. I had the opportunity to go to a jazz concert, just me and him, and we left, we would go out all the time. My wife, Susan, Kim, the kids, we do movies, we do different things. But I had the honor of going to see Herbie Hancock probably 6-8 months ago with him. And we got some tickets. I said, Hal, let's go check this out. Just me and you, let's have a dude night. So we did. And we meet up over there. I think, I know I ended up Ubering leaving there. So, but we had a little too much fun, we'll say. But Hal, we went there, we sat outside this place called The Local right across the street from the Performing Arts Center. And we're sitting there waiting for, to enter. I think we met maybe an hour before, and we were going to have a cocktail talk, chat. And we're sitting there, and I see this homeless guy, and Hal's there was a lady who had an extra ticket next to us at the table. She was asking us, did you guys want a ticket to Herbie? And I was like, no, we got tickets. And this is Hal's heart. He was like, hey, but he looked over and he was like, that guy probably over there, he could use a ticket. And the lady looked at him like he was crazy at first, she well-to-do woman. And she's like, what, I'm going to hand it to a homeless guy? But Hal's like, yeah, why not? Who else are you going to hand it to? And it's true. But that's Hal's, Hal didn't look at any person, I think, or pass judgment. Not that I ever knew him. And we went to a lot of different places and saw a lot of different people from walks of life, whether or not you were just a server, he would listen to your story. Whether or not you were the doctor sitting behind us at a restaurant, he'd listen to your story. Whether or not you were his realtor, he'd, befriend you and become your best friend. But over those 5 years, like I said, we've done a ton of stuff. We had so many conversations, you'd figure there was, we would talk hours, it was, hours. It would be Friday night from 8 till 10:30, sit in the garage, glass of wine, and talk to Hal. That was Hal night. So, and we just would chat about everything, but always the same theme was Hal was driven to learn more, compassionate about others, loved his family. His first thing he would do is tell me something about how he was proud of Lily for doing something or proud of Jackson for doing something else. And that was always on his mind. He was so proud of both of them. And I'm proud to have been able to meet his family and get to know them as much as I do. There's things that we were supposed to do, which I'll still continue, and we'll do that and carry on. I know we were supposed to go golfing, and we will. And this isn't supposed to be sad, but there are some sad parts at the end of the day. We'll still do all those things in Hal's memory and for Hal, because he'll be looking down at us. I think it's going to be, anyone who met him here knows he had the funny side. Like I said, not an angry bone in his body. He was just a cheerful, funny guy. And I gotta say, he did talk to me about his family, and I heard stories about you, Steve. So I kind of feel like I know you a little bit, but I don't know you, and I'll get to meet you after. He talked highly of your friendship, and so I guess I heard about some people, but I didn't get to really until this week, which was a tough week, I think, on many of us. But I got to meet the family, and I got to see Hal through all these different lenses. And I got to say, nothing really changed. Like, it's still Hal. It's the Hal I knew. It was, how you meet some people and they've got different personalities with different people. Hal was Hal, no matter who he was with. I just wish I could have met, Jay and Don at a family dinner with all of us there together. But I got to say, I love that I've been able to meet you guys and, be there to try to help to ease anything I can, because that's what Hal would want. And my goal is to try to help out as much as possible. I think other than that, I just, I want to thank everybody, like I said, for taking a moment, talking to me, making me feel welcome yesterday at that dinner. I'm not family, but I love his family more than anything, and I loved Hal more than anything, extended family. But he's, I look forward to chatting with some of you. Some of you I haven't met, and I look forward to chatting with you. And really just want to leave it there. Yeah. And thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think, do you want to say something? Sure. Oh, okay. So this is my middle brother. We're pretty close. Wayne's my youngest brother, and he's had an illustrious career. He was in the U.S. Senate in D.C. and then in corporate McDonald's headquarters as a communications person. So we'll see how good he is at communicating.
I think even better, I knew Hal.
Yes.
So my name is Walter Riker. I happen to be Don's brother, and Wayne Riker, my brother, is also here. And my real name is Muncie.
Yes.
So if you know me, that's really my family name. I'm proud to be named after my father and our father, but my real name is Muncie. So if you're in with the family, you know me as Muncie, and I'm very proud of that. I remember the day Hal was born, and my brother Wayne reminded me we were both in Lawrence, Kansas in 1971. I was playing in a rock band and as a drummer, and my brother Wayne is a monster musician, incredible guitarist, played in the band with him on the road for years, and we made albums together in recording studios in San Diego, one of the highlights of my life. But Wayne is an amazing musician. Learned a lot from him. So we happened to be in Lawrence, Kansas at the time, and Don called us and said, hey, I knew Lee was pregnant and everything. And so we were real excited. And so Don called and said, hey, we got a new son. And well, what's his name? What's his name? His name is Hal. And I said, okay, we know his nickname. What's his real name? And nobody names his kid Hal, right? So why did you name your kid after Harold?
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Harold Riker. It didn't make any sense. So then he convinced us that actually, no, his name was just Hal. They didn't know you ripped off Hal Holbrook. But anyway, so he became Hal. And eventually, I took a bus from Fort Lee, New Jersey, where my parents lived, up to Ithaca, up into the snow belt to meet Scott and this new guy, Hal, in a mobile home in the snow belt hell of Ithaca, New York. And it was a long bus ride, and even longer one going back. But it was Christmas, actually, as I recall. And I'll never forget it. We watched Beethoven's Ninth on the TV in your mobile home. And so I always just associated Beethoven's Ninth with Christmas, actually because of Hal and Scott. And gigantic dog that took up almost all of the mobile home, as I recall. What a stupid move that was. Great Pyrenees. It was Snow White. I kind of matched the outdoors. But as I watched the kids grow up, and I sure knew this Hal, very well. Hell of a kid, big smile. And I went up again to see the family up in Ithaca. I almost got killed in a motor accident on the snowboat. Hell of Ithaca. I was coming over the crest of a road in my car, and I skidded on the ice, and I couldn't make it. And I just sat in there, and the driveway to Donald's shack was right there. And I remember seeing a car coming over the crest of the hill, high speed, and it saw me, and I was stalled on the highway. And the guy braked, and I just saw it coming right at me, and I knew I was going to get hit. I got T-boned pretty hard. Ended up on the other side of the car. My teeth were chipped, and was kind of momentarily knocked out, but I survived. And as luck would have it, a cop met me in the OR, and he gave me a ticket. Thanks, Don. But
That was Route 79.
yeah, don't drive up there in the winter, let me tell you. So anyway, I watched Hal grow up. He was just an enchanting kid. And it's funny, the things you remember about people. But I remember him really well in that boys' choir. And we're up there again on a Christmas Eve, actually. And I remember Christine, my great wife there, and we're sitting up in the balcony and listening to that magical singing. And I remember the choir coming out after the performance, almost like this. I was looking down, and I saw him, and he was holding a candle. And it's, again, funny what you think, but has a really strong memory of Hal, seeing encapsulate innocence and joy, talent, all in one shot there. And then later, as I was thinking about Hal and all the many years they knew him, and I know him quite well, obviously, but I was always proud to be his uncle. The thing I remember, for some reason, keep coming back to me, was Scott and Hal in a kind of messy bedroom on a bed playing knock hockey. Back and forth, knocking that thing around, a board game, a wooden board game with hockey. Those guys were monsters at it. I tried to beat them. I had no chance. But it's just, again, the funny things you remember, but two brothers playing knock hockey. It was obvious he was a really talented guy, and like his great dad, he was a Renaissance man. He was interested in everything, curious about everything. Donald really touched my life in a huge way through his interest in music. He turned me on to jazz. In fact, he bought me my first drumsticks and practice pads while I was studying for my biology final at Trinity School. I think I got a D, but I was learning paradiddle, so it wasn't all a lost cause. And so through music, Hal and I really hit it off because he had an incredible musical ear. He could sit at a piano and knock out chords of songs just off the top of his head. He was interested in all kinds of music. He built a guitar. He got into drumming. I was a lot better, actually, but I tried to mentor him as best I could. But we had a lifelong interest in jazz, of course. We talked about drumming all the time, and his favorite drummer, as well as mine, was a guy named Tony Williams. And we could talk forever about Tony Williams. I consider the greatest jazz drummer of all time, but Hal agreed with me, so we had a lot of commonality there. We also had ongoing interest in politics and music. And as life moved on, Hal would call me, and I was very honored when he did, and would talk for a long time. But actually, if you knew Hal, it was more like listening. So after a couple of hours, I'd chime in, and then go on for another hour, and I'd chime in. That's the way it was. But I was really honored later in life when he was in the corporate world, the business world, and, welcome to the big leagues, and life changes pretty quickly. And I was at McDonald's Corporation for 17 years, so I know something about corporations, and Hal was kind of struggling in some ways to get comfortable and how to react to the ongoing wars and politics and backstabbing and big time corporate life. You wouldn't know anything about that. So I was honored to mentor him, and sometimes had to give him tough love. And he probably didn't like it at first, but it meant a lot to me when he later, I think, told Don that, Muntz was right about a lot of that stuff. And so I was honored to help him in that way, because when you go through the corporate ringer, you learn a few things. But he sure did. Super talented guy. Everybody knew that. He blew me away with his IT knowledge. I can't even comprehend it. But he always had that continual learning curve on a really incredibly difficult technical world that he had to survive in. And so it was pretty unbelievable. But as things happen and, we all move around, and I wasn't accessible really to go up to Connecticut or New York or wherever, it was. And so I kind of lost touch in the kind of face-to-face world of Hal and Scott and the extended families and Kim. But through Facebook, and I am a Facebooker, I was able to follow your family. And it was very revealing, because it was very clear. It was like an open heart to the world, that what was really important was he didn't post about jazz or politics even. He posted about his family. And so I was lucky in that I could actually see Jack and Lily growing up, and Kim, and the Hal we came to know, the real Hal. So I see those shots of him on the family. I saw him on Facebook with the big dogs and Kim and the kids' activities and going to parades and at the beach and all this stuff. And it wasn't, some bragging thing or politics or some of the nonsense you see on social media. It was clear that he was all in all the time with the family. And so I want to go back to Hal. When I called Donald that famous day, and Hal, what the heck is that? Well, as it turns out, there's a huge meaning behind Hal. I did some research, and actually Hal is a derivative of Henry in the English world. And what is it? Maybe it's music. I don't know. But no, but Hal in real English is master of the household. Think about it. How prescient was that name, Hal? It's really Henry. Hal is Henry in English. And wouldn't you know that what's in a name? Shakespeare, Henry V. Who's the hero of Henry V? It's a guy named Hal. And the more I thought about it, how fitting it is that Hal, the hero of Henry V, is actually Prince Hal. And so the way I'd like to remember it, and I think all of you for the rest of our time will always remember him as Prince Hal. So God rest in peace.
All right. Thank you. Not bad for a younger brother, but Okay, so this is the time to, I was going to say to see whoever else would like to say a few things. Wayne, do you want to? Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Sorry. Oh, the kids. Yeah, I'm sorry. kids. Sorry? Okay. Okay. Keep it short, Wayne. We got kids in line here.
Wobbly knees. Testing 1, 2. Good. Well, I've just learned a lot from my older brother here because I thought Hal, have you seen the movie 2001? That's what I thought, right? Hal, perfect. Hal, the computer. That, no, struck out on that one, didn't I? Yeah. And then Muntz here did not give the etymology of how he got that name. There was a criminal guy in New York City named Madman Muntz in the 1940s, and he was stealing TVs out of appliance stores. And so my dad equated Walter as kind of a madman running around the house. So he started calling him Madman Muntz, and that's how the name stuck. So it's the 1980s. And do you remember the video cams, the big video cams you go around with, right? And I had one of those because I had 2 children at the time that were young. And I was videotaping everything I could, through the 80s into the 90s. And in 1993, I flew my 2 young children in from San Diego, where I've been for a long time, to Cincinnati, where Don and his family was. And we thought, okay, we're just coming in for a visit, and this be, Don and my sister-in-law, Lee. And I thought this will be kind of cool. And the kids come in. And I said, all right. So first day, got it. Then all of a sudden, like the next day, all of a sudden, I see my grandniece, Kim, and my grandnephew, Tim. And they're really little. They're like 3 and 5. And they're on the John Deere tractor running around in there. I said, hey, this is kind of cool. Let me get them on the video. And so I got that in the video. I said, that's really cool. And they played with my 2 children. And then all of a sudden, Scott pulls up, right? My nephew, Scott, in a white van. And he comes out of the white van and pulls in a long drive, right? And Kim's mom was there. She comes out of the van and thinking, boy, this is getting to be almost everybody that's here. And then on the final day, Muntz shows up driving to Chicago. So I got everybody that's almost here on video from 1993, and it turned into kind of this great get together. And I got you saw some of the video, right, of that occasion. Well, anyway, it was getting to be the last day of the visit, and Hal was getting kind of burnt out, with the whole thing, and he was 22 at the time. And he said, hey, Dad, you got some wheels? And Don gave him some keys, and Hal said to me, come on, Wayne, let's go hear some music. Oh, great. So we hopped in the car, the 2 of us, and we had this great night of music. And and we're both not from the area. We're just driving around Cincinnati going, anybody playing, trying to hear out in the streets. So we stumbled into this kind of restaurant bar where we heard music coming out. And we said, let's check it out. So we were having a great time and went, and it was standing, there were no seats. And the band was a blues band. And the guitarist, we never heard of him, it was just a local trio, right? And the guitarist was kind of a Stevie Ray Vaughan impersonator. He had the black hat and all that. And we started thinking, man, well, this guy's great. He's really playing his butt off. This is really something. And all of a sudden, I'm more interested in the action on the dance floor. Looking around, hey, and Sal's going to me, hey, Wayne, look, you see what the drummer just did? I said, no, what did he do? He says, he just did a paradiddle and then listen to his bass foot. And I'm going, I want to get out on the dance floor. And he's talking technique of the drums, It's like, and then all of a sudden he turns and says, did you see the chops this guitar player just played? I said, nope, I'm looking out on the dance floor, I'm not looking at and so he's analyzing the drums, technically, the guitar thing that was going on. He even kind of knew the scale. So he's playing that pentatonic scale. And I said, yeah, I guess so, and anyway, he was totally, just laser focused on what was happening with each instrument. And that was a real clue to where he was headed as a, kind of a real great, analysis of music, not only jazz, but he really knew rock as well and blues. And he could kind of tear down any type of music. And then recently, a few years ago, we had a lot of long chats on the phone about music and different players, drummers and all that. And it was really kind of cool. And he talked about building the guitars. And so, yeah, it's just intense guy, again, self-learner, somebody that really was curious about so many things. But I just thought I brought up that music one because I'm sitting there, I'm on vacation. I want to relax. I want to, get out in the dance floor. And he's going totally breaking down every little thing that was happening. So, yeah, great memories of Hal. And thanks for everybody to come in today. It's really been great.
Thank you, Wayne.
Yeah.
Wayne has guitar teaching books on the market. You can look at them on Amazon. He's really good. Okay, is there anyone else? Oh, Jackson, come on up. Thank you.
All right, to start off, thank you all for speaking about my dad. But seriously, this is truly a horrible thing that has happened. Like, I don't even know where to begin. I couldn't have asked for a better father than I've had. My dad was such a curious person, just such a great guy in general. He's taught me everything I know, and I just want to live out in his honor. Seriously. Anything I do from now is dedicated to him. Seriously. I could talk for hours about him, but I don't want to stand up here and just talk about my dad. But he's with us all right now. Seriously. Such a tragedy that happened at our house, but he died in peace. He died doing what he loved. The last month that he lived, seriously, I think it was the happiest month he ever had. Seriously. I mean, truly, he blessed us all. Just walking in a room, just such a magical guy. Seriously.
Hi guys, I'm his daughter. So I just wanted to talk about some of like the very first memories I had with my father. So as we've talked about, he's very into art and all that stuff. And he always pushed me to do all the stuff that I loved. And I just remember ever since I was little, he always bought me like the big 64 pack of crayons with the sharpener, of course. And, he always had the coloring books and the sketchbooks. And he always pursued me to be creative with what I love, and especially with my academics, which I appreciate. He's a great father. And, he had this just humor where I had some very hard years in school, and I would come back home and he would just make me laugh. And it just made, me so happy. And he was great. So I hope that, whenever you find a good laugh in your life, you can always think of him. So that's all I wanted to say.
Over here.
Over there.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that needs to say anything or wants to say anything? No? So, do you know there's an open house? Does everyone know that this afternoon? And it's at Hal's house. So, I think someone mentioned this, but Hal was extremely proud of his home. It's a beautiful home. It's a big Southern home. And it was his dream home, right? It was his dream home. So you're all invited to come and see how Hal and his family are living. And then there'll be food, right? Food and drinks and everything. So I think we're ready. Is that a good time to go? Okay. So do you need an address? Who needs an address? Oh. There you go. You can GPS it, obviously. Good job, guys. You did a good job. If you want to, want to see the slideshow again?